I'm here to talk to you today about sex differences in testosterone and casual partnering. Testosterone is studied within the context of pair bonding research, specifically within the testosterone trade-off theoretical framework, which maintains that higher testosterone is linked with competitive behaviors such as more sexual encounters and interest in new partners. Lower testosterone is linked with bond maintenance behaviors such as nurturance. Attitudinal sex comparisons show that men are far more accepting of casual sex than women are. So what I'm wondering is, will testosterone level changes underpin this large attitudinal sex difference by showing casual sex to be more about bond formation for women and more about competition for men? The first study I looked at wanted to see how casual partnering and testosterone are associated, and to examine why partnering and testosterone are related. They had 120 male and 115 female undergrads, aged 21 to 23. They self-identified their relationship status as either single in a casual or dating style relationship with may or may not include sex, or in a long-term relationship. Testosterone and other hormones were then measured by saliva sample, and data was analyzed for group differences in mediating variables. The authors hypothesized that the casual relationship group would have the highest testosterone, the single group would have the second highest, and the long-term relationship group would have the lowest. But surprise! Casual relationships are more like singlehood for men and more like long-term relationships for women in terms of testosterone. As you can see, the significant drop in testosterone happens for women at the casual relationship group, and it happens for men at the long-term relationship group. The authors also hypothesized that factors relating to relationship orientation would account for group differences in testosterone among men, specifically interest in new partners. And for women, they hypothesized that factors relating to relationship status, specifically frequency of masturbation, would account for women's differences in testosterone. For men, their hypothesis was confirmed. Overall dating desires, a variable related to relationship orientation, was positively correlated with testosterone, and a significant predictor of testosterone across all men. For women, their hypothesis was partially confirmed. Frequency of masturbation did account for some of the variance between testosterone and partnering. However, frequency of partnered sexual activity, a relationship status-oriented variable, was negatively correlated with testosterone and the key predictor of testosterone across all women. To conclude this study, past findings were replicated or nearly so. Single men did have higher testosterone than men in long-term relationships, and there was a similar trend for women. Within casual relationships, testosterone was lower for women only than singles. And these results suggest that women's testosterone levels are linked with stator-static type changes, and that more partnered sex may cause a woman's testosterone to decrease. So it's decreasing within that particular woman. In contrast, men's results suggest that men's levels of testosterone are linked with relationship orientation, which may be a static trait. And this means that men that just happen to have low testosterone at baseline, they may be oriented towards long-term relationships all along, even before they get into them. Whereas men with high testosterone may not choose to enter into long-term relationships at all. So this brings me to my next question. If women's increased frequency of partnered sex predicts a testosterone decrease, what might be driving her desire for partnered sex? This next study chose to examine associations between testosterone, cortisol, perceived stress, and dyadic sexual desire, which means partnered sexual desire in men and women. So before I continue, a little bit of previous research. Corticosterone and cortisol have been demonstrated to promote pair bonding in different species. Cortisol has been shown to rise when couples fall in love. They've both also been demonstrated to induce the release of neuropeptides, such as oxytocin, which in turn reduce anxiety. And most of this data comes from animals, though the data from humans is in agreement with the data from animals. So the sample for this next study was the same as it came from the first study, as well as the data sets. And the specific data that was looked at comes from the perceived stress scale and the sexual desire inventory. Testosterone and cortisol were measured by saliva samples again, and the data was analyzed for mediators and moderators of dyadic sexual desire. So the results of this study show that when cortisol or perceived stress are high in women, testosterone significantly negatively correlates with dyadic sexual desire. Perceived stress was also a strong predictor of dyadic sexual desire. So as you can see here, the majority of the women that have high dyadic sexual desire have lower testosterone. And that is only a significant correlation when it is in high cortisol women. See, in the lower cortisol women, not quite so significant. So to conclude, these findings for perceived stress and cortisol indicate stress as an important influence on dyadic sexual desire in women only. Together, these findings suggest that if a woman's cortisol is high entering into the casual dating relationship phase, her desire for partnered sex will increase, and this may increase her actual frequency of partnered sex, both of which may facilitate the testosterone decrease we see at casual relationship. So in this way, cortisol, a hormone involved in bond formation, may strengthen the testosterone decrease at casual partnering. Conversely, without cortisol, she may lose interest in sex and not show the testosterone drop, and perhaps even discontinue with the casual relationship. So of course, these studies had some limitations. Biggest limitation is that they are just correlational studies, so no directionality was established. For example, we don't know if the testosterone decrease in women preceded the increased frequency of partnered sex, or if it was the other way around. Self-report data was used, so of course it could have been dishonest or inaccurate. Only saliva samples were taken. It would have been better to have blood as well, of course. And no menstrual phase data was collected. However, the researchers did say that previous research has shown that menstrual testosterone fluctuations over the menstrual phase would have been too small to make a difference in this study. And they weren't specifically looking at the menstrual phase either, so they decided to leave it out. So the take-home message here, testosterone and cortisol operate in significantly different ways for men and women during casual sex. However, more comprehensive research is needed to know if the changes women experience are in fact a sign of bond formation. And I would suggest for a future direction to conduct a longitudinal study to determine causation with a large enough sample to cover dropouts, and to have the subjects start, just to have single subjects to start, and then to track them over time to monitor any partnering status changes, to measure cortisol, testosterone, oxytocin, and vasopressin. It would be ideal to measure all of these because then we can better assess bond formation taking place, and it would also be ideal to collect blood, saliva, and self-report data twice a month for 2 years, I would say. As well, it would be good to do a study like this in different populations that have different ages and sex ratios as well, to see if we get different results. There's my references page. Thank you very much. Any questions?